The discussions that have arisen and the narrative that's arisen around Bud Light is probably a good lesson for every CEO in every sector of the economy. Number one, it highlights the power of social media. They took it out by basically boycotting the product immediately.
Yeah.
And switching preference to other brands that did not make them get involved in this issue. Now, if you're trying to manage that and trying to learn something from it, and I certainly talk to all my CEOs about this because here we are talking about it in its second month.
Yeah.
This is a nightmare from hell for the brand. So when you go into gender narrative on a beer, which is primarily consumed by men, maybe you should have thought a little bit about that in reading that room.
Joining me now, Dave Rubin, my buddy, obviously host of the Rubin Report. Dave, okay, help me understand this. Because you think about a brand like Anheuser-Busch and Bud Light and things like that. Obviously, these corporations do a bunch of things I don't like, you don't like, no one likes. But I do think there are smart people that work there, lots of them. I mean, these are people who got 4.0s in schools and went to places like Yale, right, Dave? I mean, they do sit around and discuss these things.
I sense sarcasm, Jesse Kelly. Look, first, let's give the devil his due here. The woke, when they infect a system, they destroy that system wholly, and they have consistently done that with virtually everything they've touched. I wrote down one line that Kevin O'Leary said there, not make them get involved in this issue. That really is what this is about. If you are trying to sell beer, there are quite literally thousands and thousands of brands and subcategories of beers out there, right? So if you're buying a beer, it's usually because of some sort of brand loyalty, or you saw a commercial that maybe turned you onto it, or you like this or that can, whatever it might be, or you like an IPA as opposed to a light beer or whatever else. But the point is, there's so many choices that why go out of your way to have Dylan Mulvaney in your commercial and have his or her face on the can, et cetera, unless you are trying to push something that has nothing to do with selling beer. And by the way, we know that's exactly what they were doing because the marketing executive in charge of this was on a Zoom call. You may have played it on your show. We played it on mine, where she basically said, look, we don't really like the frat boys who are drinking our beer, and we want it to be a more diverse beer, and that's why we're doing this. Except the point, as Kevin is making, dudes drink beer. And if you don't like the people who are buying your product, you should probably get another job rather than switching how the marketing of the product is going.
Dave, here's the CEO of Target, Brian Cornell. I found this interesting.
Some of the companies that I've worked with, whether it's Target today or in the past working for PepsiCo, that common thread was recognizing that diverse and inclusive environments deliver great results.
Yeah.
And I've always tried to ensure that our leadership team, our organization reflected the consumer we serve. And when you get that equation right, it's the right thing for society. It's the right thing for the team. It's also the right thing for business and shareholders. So I think we all have an oversized role to play right now to advance diversity and inclusion, to stand next to our Black leaders who need our support, to make sure it's really clear in our industry and our companies, we're not going to tolerate racism.
Dave, do you think these guys are starting to understand that they're in between a rock and a hard place now? The Target, the Bud Light stuff, we got Pride Month coming up tomorrow. Do you think there's apprehension in the corporate boardrooms about what's coming?
Jesse, I have 3 words for this guy. Step down, Whitey. If he really believes anything that he's saying, find a Black lesbian who can do that job, because I'm sure one exists. So don't just sit there and tell me how much you love diversity, Mr. Old White Man. Step down and prove it. They are complete fraudsters. I have no doubt, I don't know his entire resume, but I have no doubt that to become the Target CEO, you have to have a pretty solid resume working at Pepsi, et cetera, et cetera. If you think for 1 second that in this guy's 40-year career, he was hiring people based on sexuality or skin color to build out the best product, the best companies that he could so he could get that pretty lofty freaking title of Target CEO, you're completely insane. No, he brought in the best people possible to move product. That is the point of a CEO. You sell product, your shareholders are happy. You've hopefully put a good product out there. You can expand, grow your business, move into other cities, et cetera, et cetera. He's a liar and a fraud, but that's what all of these guys are. And I think what will help turn some of this around is that eventually the shareholders of these companies, if you're the CEO, you have a fiduciary responsibility to your shareholders to make a profit. If you keep going out of your way to do things that gets the average person to turn against you, and then we've seen Target's stock price plummet. I think they've lost about $10 billion in market share, if I'm not mistaken. Well, then eventually you're no longer doing your duty to the shareholder. So I think all of these guys have some comeuppance on the way.
Dave, the Disney stuff, because it's primary season now and just the field gets flooded with all kinds of lies and things like that. Would you remind people, how did there get to be a controversy between Disney and the Florida government in the first place? And what's the status of all that now? How did all this come to be?
God, it's so ridiculous. Bill HB 1557, which I wish more people called it that instead of, quote, don't say gay, end quote, which had the word gay wasn't even in the freaking bill. It was about parental rights in education, and should you know what your kids are being taught and who's teaching it to them, and literally should a fifth grade, not even fifth grade, I was gonna say 5-year-old, but a 7-year-old second grader, should a teacher be allowed to talk about gender and sexuality privately with them for months, call them by a different pronoun or a different name altogether, and not inform you, the parent? Jesse, I know that you and I are roughly the same age. Back in our day, if you're in 5th grade, right, and they wanted to take you to the zoo, you'd have to have a parent sign a form. They couldn't just take you to see the zoo. But somehow we have 3rd grade teachers talking to kids about chopping their genitals off, and that's okay. Anyway, Disney fully backed this nonsense, and DeSantis did what a good conservative would do, which is occasionally use state power for the right reasons. And all he did was take away Disney's special privileges that they had. So in other words, Disney had tax breaks and all sorts of special regulations around their properties that SeaWorld did not have, that Universal Studios that did not have, Gator World. I mean, these are other things that are in the Orlando area. And all he did was make it an even playing field. So it's really funny to watch some of these conservative, quote unquote conservatives, like Chris Christie and Mike Pence and all these other people, and Nikki Haley, who I like Nikki, but it's like, what are you saying? That the government shouldn't make it an even playing field for people? He took away crony capitalism. I would say these people at this point are more corporatists than they are conservatives.
What's Gator World, Dave? That sounds awesome. I want to go to Gator World. What's Gator World? Awesome.
I don't even know if Gator World is still going. I haven't been there since I moved back to Florida, but I was in Gator World when I was about 12. When I was about 12 years old, my parents took us to Disney. We went to Gator World, and this can't still exist, but they literally had a giant tank full of gators. They had a chicken wire going across the thing with live chickens hanging from their feet, and the gators were coming out, crushing them, blood, bones everywhere. It was awesome.
That sounds sick. You're right. You're right. There's no way that's still allowed these days. What a better time we grew up in.
It was so
Dave
great,
Rubin,
so
thanks,
great.
buddy.
I'm doing that in my backyard over my pool now. You come on anytime.
I'll be down next week.
For too long, we've been led to believe that communism is a thing of the past. But the truth is, communism is alive. It's here, and it's infiltrating every aspect of American life. Introducing the Anti-Communist Manifesto by Jesse Kelly, the practical guide for patriots ready to defend our nation from its most dangerous enemy. Discover the shocking extent of communist infiltration in our education system, their alliance with American corporations, and the twisted truth behind environmentalism. This eye-opening book exposes the true face of communism and empowers you to fight back. Join the fight for freedom. Pre-order your copy of the Anti-Communist Manifesto today by going to jessekellybook.com.